guys, glad you're here. You know those times when you're minding your own business and suddenly someone shouts, "The Kaiser is marking you for death." And before you can even react, they pop a cap in your knee, and you think about making a joke about being an adventurer, but the weapon wasn't quite right? Yeah, and that's just happened to me. Another Legion patrol reduced to a pile of meat and vulture food. I can't help but think that maybe if they sent like 20 troops at me at once instead of 5 at a time, they wouldn't be down 80 soldiers. I hope Legion isn't subscribed to me. Anyway, I still had adrenaline coursing through me, so I needed to get somewhere safe before it wore off and my leg gave out. I noticed a door built into the cliffside nearby, so I backtracked there. But of course, it led to a vault. Vault 11. But I couldn't be choosy. And maybe it still didn't happen with a doctor who specialized in leg care. So, I went into the vault. I immediately wasn't feeling too hot about my doctor theory due to the 4 skeletons I found huddled around the entrance. The good news is that they died via suicide. The bad news is they did it because they felt guilty about being the only survivors. Which meant no doctors left. But I can treat myself. I once flew in as a medic for the NCR and amputated a leg. It would have been perfect if it hadn't been the wrong leg. And he probably would have survived if I treated the resulting infection. Rest in peace, soldier whose name I forgot. The adrenaline did start to wear off as I limped in, but I was insanely lucky that the infirmary is the first room you see when entering the vault. After ignoring the rats and killing the mantises that must have come from Vault 22, curse them, I was able to fix up my leg with no infections this time. As always, my curiosity took hold of me. All the residents were gone, leaving nothing behind but election posters and Halloween decor. Surely there had to be a reason why, and surely that reason was Vault 11's awful layout. It made no sense. In the entry level, there was the infirmary. No red flags there. I put in the center, but that's fine. Then there's the classroom. On the first floor. Right next to the vault door. On the one hand, if there is an emergency in the vault during school, the children could be evacuated first. You know, into the deadly and irradiated wasteland. But on the other hand, if raiders break in, the children are the first line of defense. At least the clinic is right there, so they can quickly sew their little limbs back on and throw them back into the heat of battle. There was a bathroom for both men and women, and I thought, yeah, my bladder is moderately full, I could use a stall. Unfortunately, the first stall I tried was occupied by a mantis. I don't even know how I got in there and closed the door behind it, but after what I did to that stall, I wasn't going next. Rounding off the list of rooms on the top floor is a cigar lounge, right down the hall from the classroom, so the kids can learn vices young. Or maybe it was designed so papas could drop their little miracles off and then go complain about their dead bedrooms. I think I can pinpoint why there's a lack of action, but more on that later. Strangely enough, there's also a dead NCR trooper here. He's not the one I knew since he has both legs. He also hasn't started decomposing yet, so he must have gotten here fairly recently. I cannot for the life of me figure out why he's here or how he died. Almost like he was a forgotten asset from cut content. That was all that floor had to offer, so I moseyed downstairs to where there was a lab. Just like in the middle of the flight of stairs. An entrance and an exit, and then more stairs. You'd think that was the only bad design choice. But it gets worse. Because the next set of stairs leads to a computer lab, and then more stairs. I was starting to think the experiment of this vault was to make it as non-wheelchair friendly as possible. Most vaults don't have elevators or ramps either, but they also don't have stairs leading to the center of the freaking earth. To split the computer and science lab across from each other. Speaking of the computer lab, one of the computers tried to kill me when I turned it on. I'm not too upset about that. I'm actually more impressed Vault-Tec had a vault where LAN parties could be achieved. Descending down the stairs, I finally reached a portion of the vault where space is being utilized well. The common room is nice. A few couches, a few bookshelves, and looks to be a commissary where I assume customer credit is stored on the computer. If I'm correct, they sell a wide variety of items, including Nuka-Cola, chessboards, which I think would just be public property, and of course, fission batteries. All the essentials. They also have a single crutch in stock. Only one. They really don't want people to traverse this vault if their legs aren't mostly working. But let's look at the good. A nice common room. I appreciate this. But why are the living quarters segregated into male and female dorms? It's not an academy or boarding school. There are married couples with kids living here. This is why I think the bedrooms are dead, because they're all shared with 5 other people. I imagine it must be hard to perform when you have a lot of eyes on you. The worst part, this isn't even part of the experiment. The experiment is completely different and so much darker. After they were sealed in the vault, the overseer announced that every year they would have to sacrifice a member or Vault-Tec would kill them all. Well, turns out the vault doors weren't too happy about that, and they couldn't open the vault to leave, so it was almost unanimous to sacrifice their first overseer. And after that, they needed a new overseer. And after they sacrificed the first one, it became kind of tradition that the overseer would be sacrificed. After I learned this, the posters slamming people while telling others to elect them overseer made so much more sense. It recontextualized the whole vault. At this point, I wasn't sure how sacrificing one person a year could still result in being down to 5 people. It only takes 9 months to make a baby. And I'm not saying sacrifice a baby, though that would be an easy solution. But it's easy to keep the population up. I assume most vaults have strict rules on reproduction anyway, just make sure you replace someone each year. After sweeping the dorms, which I maintain is still a stupid choice, I learned a bit more about the residents of this vault and their process. Whenever there's a democratic system in power, like-minded people will form groups, or in Vault 11's case, blocks. There were 6 blocks in total, but based on the number of beds available in this vault, they each had to have like a max of 3 or 4 people. Despite the low number of people and large number of blocks, the Justice block seems to be the only one that had any actual power. So I guess they had 7 or 8 people instead, and they had posters showing they were always keen to recruit new members. The cool thing about democracy is that even if you're easily manipulated, you still get a vote. The Overseer had all the power, but the Justice block basically ran the all because nobody wanted to cross their executioner's blade. And they ran it straight into the ground. Being in power does not make people bad. However, when bad people are in power, they can assume they're untouchable and get worse and worse. I don't know if the whole Justice block is corrupt, but the president was. Roy Gottlieb. This guyliner wearing weasel somehow wormed his way to the presidency of the Justice block, and he's petty as can be. Nathan Stone was on a winning streak in poker against the Justice block, so they decided to nominate him for Overseer, and therefore death, which puts a real damper on future game nights. And sure, that alone is scummy, but he decides to do worse. Catherine Stone, Nathan's wife, intervenes trying to save her husband. Roy Gottlieb tells her they will not nominate her husband if she's willing to satisfy the members of the Justice block in a sexual manner. It's not stated how far they took it, but I assume they would not be easily satisfied. She agreed because what other option did she have? Let her husband die? So anyway, her husband was nominated. The Justice block is clearly not diabetic because they were trying to have their cake and eat Catherine's too. Catherine, who is the hero of Vault 11, was understandably furious and started murdering members of the Justice block in retaliation. And while I feel a jury would have trouble convicting her, having an easy scapegoat for Overseer that year is a lot more tantalizing. I learned all that while exploring the security office. Fun thing about the armory is that it's outside of the security office instead of in it. Because this is the stupidest vault design ever. At least they put security in the middle level of the vault. They can be ready if something happens below, and can respond to external threats quickly after the children have fallen. Catherine, only her husband gets to call her Kate, had a goal. Her reasoning was it would save her husband and also thin out the leadership of the Justice block. And her plan worked. She was elected as Overseer to probably the delight of the Justice block. Then there was very swift retribution as the first thing she did was dissolve the voting system and switch to a random number generator. From that point on, the new Overseer would be randomly picked, which meant the blocks lost all their power. Nobody was safe. Except maybe children. I'm sure Vault-Tec would accept sacrificial children, but it's up to Catherine to set the parameters. She has no mentioned children, but she is married, so perhaps they have some little ones. And now we're back to the person who caused the downfall of the Vault. Roy Gottlieb. A true trash person. I don't fault him for wanting to stay alive. I don't even fault him for voting to sacrifice a person every year. They thought they had to. I fault him for his disgusting abuse of power, going back on his word, and his explosive reactions. He would have made a great politician. After Catherine dissolved the voting system, he was upset because his time in the sun was coming to an end, and he was willing to go to an extreme to make sure it didn't. But more on that later, we still have some more of the vault to explore. I descended another level and found that the Overseer's office had the whole floor to itself. It used to share it with the upper floor of the atrium, but the structural integrity of the ceiling split them apart. I skipped going into the office at that moment because experience has taught me that those things are almost always password locked. But I'm sure I'd make more there eventually. Only a floor down is the generators. I walked in and immediately tripped a wire. I didn't notice for a second until I saw the grenade on the ground. Just about killed me and broke my leg. I wasn't about to crawl up like 20 flights of stairs back to the infirmary, so I was glad I brought supplies with me. After fixing up my leg and a hearty dose of MREs, I was bipedal again and started exploring while being mindful of my 2 stupid feet. That's when I finally noticed just about every door had a booby trap or sandbags piled up. Also, lots of skeletons. Really weird to include Halloween decorations at your attempted coup. And there was an attempted coup. That was Gottlieb's plan to remain in power after it was wrested from him. He got his remaining block members to take the power, water, and food until authority was given to him. I assume they got their weapons from the armory. If only that had been somewhere less accessible. The fact that 2 traps were still set, but they were blood splatters, leads me to believe that they failed miserably at defending the power. I found this out because Gottlieb recorded all on his personal terminal in the dormitory and left his password laying a few feet away. For once, I didn't take the stairs down to the next level. I dove! The next level was completely flooded, and this was insanely foolish of me. Never dive somewhere if you don't know where your next chance for air will be. I was lucky that there was just enough room at the top of the floor for me to continuously catch my breath. While down here, I also found a piece to fix the air conditioners for that cult in the mountain. Like I ever plan on going back there. Still, it was rare tech. Completely submerged in water and probably completely unusable rare tech, but rare tech all the same. So I took it. Weird thing was, I could not find where this leak sprang from or what these rooms were. I guess utilities of some kind, but seemingly undefended. On the same level, but disconnected for some reason, was the reactor room, which some guy was not kidding about defending. I found 3 missiles in an ammo box. These never should have even been brought down here. At best, they needed assault rifles for possible raids. But in what is probably the worst design choice of the whole vault, and that's a high bar. The reactor was one of only 2 paths to the atrium. The other was the knob-block path past the overseer's office. And what was weirder was there were 2 paths to it from the reactor. One path was now flooded, the other was locked but it's baffling, and they both led to the same door. Things like power and water should be kept separate from everywhere else. It should not be a hotspot for foot traffic. You know what wasn't away from everything else was only one path to it? That cafeteria. Yeah, the one spot people are guaranteed to go to multiple times a day because no one has a kitchen. It's just at the very back of the vault, meaning constant idiots walking through the reactor. The most important room in the whole vault. There's an argument made for water, but they are underground and need constant air recycling. Reactor blows and they'll all suffocate very soon. This is just the completely most undefendable design choice I can ever imagine. What the heck were they thinking at Vault-Tec? That's not part of their experiment. I'm not even on their script at this point. It's just rambling because, God, how do you think this is an okay design? That being said, I think it was the nicest cafeteria I've seen in a vault. 2 things for frozen storage, 7 fridges, 3 ovens, mini shelves for supplies. This place was also chosen for defense. There's only one entrance, so you have a choke point, then you control the vault's food supply. They can last a week, maybe a little longer if they pour from whatever food is left around. Guarding water and power was pointless anyway. I doubt anyone on the Justice Block was smart enough to turn them off. After all, they elected Roy into power. This left the atrium as the last spot to go, and holy cow did they have a lot of chairs. Some vaults get extra water chips, this one got so many extra chairs. I also found the prepared speech of Gus Olson, ombudsman of the Overseer election. I added new words to my vocabulary, and his speech reveals that the first Overseer's wife's name, Betty, is the password for the terminal in the Overseer's office. It seems almost clunkily added in. Just like this line. He then goes to the throat of all the corrupts in the vault, and I gotta hand it to Gus. That was brave, and I would have saluted him as he would have been elected next to the Block's hidden power. This is a reminder that nobody knew the blocks were being dissolved yet, except for Catherine and her master plan. With password in hand, there's only one place left to go. I went into the Overseer's office and narrowly avoided getting shot. Even Catherine was worried for her safety, despite her life having a known expiration date. There wasn't much on the computer that I didn't already know, but I did find the command to open the sacrificial chamber, so I cracked that puppy wide open. Time to see how many corpses were down here. In hindsight, this was the worst idea I ever had. I had no companions to get me out of here if things went south. That tunnel could have closed behind me. It should have sealed me in the moment that voice tried to calm me down with the light, but it was just for... lamp thingies. I don't know the name of every lighting device, okay? I had someone inform me that these are called floodlights. It all led to a room with a cushy chair, a projector, a wall with a screen, a small table for whiskey, wine, an ashtray, a small lamp that I don't understand the importance of, and some flowers that really should be dead. All on a nice rug. Oddly enough, this door also didn't seal behind me. I was free to go if I wanted. As I explored my would-be mausoleum, wondering where all the bodies were, the recorded voice seemed to get exasperated that I wasn't sitting on the chair and refused to start until I did. I guess it was pressure sensitive. I finally relented when the message started looping. I sat in the chair in a PowerPoint titled Happy Trails Begin with the level of effort an 11th grader in AP English who was assigned to do a memorial on a completely unremarkable fallen Vietnam War soldier would put in. And not that I didn't care about the assignment, there was just no info. His friend who got the guy's brother couldn't find any info on his guy either. You know, just as an analogy. The voice pipes up and tries to console you that you weren't meant to have good things. You were always meant to be a sacrifice, with the tact of an 11th grader in AP English explaining to his teacher that his fallen soldier was just completely plain, and most of the army probably was too. That some people are just boring and perish in war. The voice continues on, trying to make you remember the life that you had was nice, and it's clearly targeted at jocks with social lives, much unlike the 11th grader in AP English who spent so much time after school coming over stuff trying to find something for his completely boring soldier. It kept going on, and I realized I could get out of the chair. I tried to make funny hand puppets, but the light somehow went through my flesh, making me think I was already dead. Vault-Tec purchasing the afterlife is surprising, but not completely unexpected. I then realized that was impossible, because this PowerPoint was making me feel pain. I took a swing at the projector attempting to end this all, and it suddenly cut off. But it also might have been done because the wall suddenly fell, and my heart dropped with them, as I was suddenly under attack by sentry bots, robo-brains, Mr. Gutsies, and turrets. This was simply overkill! All I'm supposed to have on me is a vault suit. A single turret silently rising behind me as I sit in the chair is more than enough to end me quickly. Luckily, the weed me rose to the occasion and took everything out with his katana, going invisible and slicing through steel in a way that shouldn't be possible since I never sharpened this thing. Once I was finally safe, I looked around to examine the amount of technology in this room to run a slideshow. Vault-Tec sucks at allotment. They also store materials down here in a place no one is supposed to be. I think the skeletons were supposed to be the former overseers, but why are they completely decomposed? They're in a sealed room. Surely they should be like mummified and not completely eaten. But also, if they're dead, who cleaned the blood and viscera every time and swept the bodies into the side room? Did the robo-brain do it? Because I feel like it would be the only one capable of handling it. I noticed there's a side door and I went in to find the mainframe computer in Vault 11. If this giant piece of technology is right here, why did they need all that tech in the next room? I booted it up hoping to find an override, or at least some games. The door did finally shut when I sat in the chair. Thankfully, it did have an override and 2 more recordings that I downloaded. I started listening as I walked out. The voice said there's only 5 of them left and that they were not going to sacrifice anyone else. Props to them for realizing it's not sustainable at that point. How did they get to 5? Well, I have to imagine it was the coup not going the way Roy thought it would at all. So instead of maybe him dying, he ensured more than 90% of the vault did die, and then 8% after that. The 4 skeletons I found at the main entrance. The depressing thing is, after they told off the computer congratulated them on not sacrificing anyone and instead of killing them, unlocked the vault door. The people who dreamed up this one clearly thought they would sacrifice indefinitely or never sacrifice. Sacrificing up to a certain point never crossed their mind as the recording congratulated the dwellers and called them a shining example for their commitment to human life. The weird thing is, the only way to get to that room is to go through the sacrifice chamber, and the only way it opens is to be sacrificed. So unless they had a different terminal to yell at, not sure how they delivered the message or why the sacrifice chamber activated at all after they defied it. That is par for the course with Vault's horrible design choices, but the important thing was, thanks to my intervention, it never would again. With that, the mystery of Vault 11 was solved and my leg was healed, broken, and then healed again. So I left the vault behind me and went back to the Mojave where I was still marked for death by the Kaiser. It's amazing how one rat of a person can ruin something for everyone else. You could argue that Roy saved more lives in the long run because the cycle would perpetuate, but he saved the lives of people who would never be born, and still got a ton of people killed in the process, all but 5! And 4 of them ended up taking their own lives. I like to imagine the last survivor was Nathan Stone, just so that this wasn't all for nothing. I feel bad that Gus Olsen's wish goes ungranted. There was no deeper reasoning, just a sick experiment. And the experiment, as well as the vault, was a success. 1 person survived and made it out. Not that I would have cared if no one survived, of course, because the vaults were never meant to save anyone.